Welcome to the very first episode of 6 Degrees of Kylo Ren. For this first installment, I'd like to introduce Mary and Irina, who will be discussing fan fiction surrounding the Star Wars universe with an emphasis on Reylo. That is, the love story between Rey and Kylo Ren from the sequel trilogy. Let's get started.
I'm Mary and I'm here with Irina. Today we're going to have a little fun episode for you all. We're going to be talking about our favourite Star Wars fanfiction, both Reylo and General. So, before we start, how did you get into fanfiction, Irina?
I remember my first fandom I actually got actively engaged with was the Phantom of the Opera fandom. You know, I saw the 2004 movie for the first time. I loved it at the time. Well, I still love it today, even though I'm more able to see the flaws it has and everything. I still love it as a guilty pleasure. The story, when it ended, it kind of left me wanting more, so I said to myself, like, hey, maybe somewhere on the internet, on the forums or something, like, people actually wrote, like, a sequel to that story. So I just typed in Google, like, Phantom of the Opera stories, and I ended up falling across fanfiction.net, and I said, oh my god, this is a thing, and that's how I fell into the rabbit hole, basically. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's the same with me, except mine was actually with Harry Potter. It was just after the Chamber of Secrets came out, and for some reason, I don't know why, I was very curious about the potential relationship between Draco Malfoy and Hermione. So I googled Draco and Hermione stories, and voila, fanfiction.net came up, and there were loads of stories between Dramini, I think it's called now.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing. What is this? So yeah, I clicked on my first Dramini fic, and I've never looked back. Fanfiction has become a daily part of my life. I can't live without it. So what do you love about it, Irina?
Well, I think it's really the matter of, if it just gives you, like, such a freedom over the stories you love. Like, let's say, you're watching a TV series, there was that one thing happening that you didn't like, you can just choose to write something to kind of vent about your frustration and, making things right. If you didn't have enough of your favorite characters, like, it's a possibility for you to imagine other stories where they're in it. One thing I really love about fanfiction is alternate universes. Like, I know it's not everybody's piece of cake, but I really love it because you can take your characters and put them in another setting entirely, and especially that there are so many fandoms out there where it's so easy to put them in another setting and make an amazing story. And I've read so many alternate universes that are amazing, and I just say to myself, like, why isn't this published? Like, this would actually be a good standalone story if you just changed the characters' names and everything. So yeah.
No, I agree. I've read quite a lot of fan fiction that is actually better than published fiction, and that's just it's amazing. It really shows, like, the talent of a lot of writers, and my stance on fan fiction is pretty much the same as yours. Like, if you don't like something, you can just, like, go and look and see other people's perceptions of, like, how that scene could have gone or how those characters could have gone, and it allows you to be so creative. I also like the fact that, you can explore potential character relationships between characters who have never even met. So, for example, Rey and General Hux, if you want to go off and explore how they might interact, you're free to do so. Like, I have so many crack ships, as they're called, from various fan fictions and fandoms, because I just think, wow, if these two characters met, I think it would be, like, offer interesting story potential. Like, for example, I really liked the idea of Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata Hyuga from Naruto, and how they might interact, and they never met in canon whatsoever. So yeah, it's really interesting to see what people can come up with.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because my number one OTP in the Phantom of the Opera fandom, it's totally a crack ship. It's Eric and Meg Giri.
Oh, that's amazing!
Yeah, I know! I mean, I just fell across, when I started discovering, like, fanfiction.net, I actually fell across totally by coincidence on an Eric Magfic, and I just clicked on it. I said like, oh, this looks interesting, and I just fell down in the rabbit hole, and I just keep, even today, like, I insist that if those two characters interacted, like, even if it's not in a romantic way, like, I think you could do something amazing. The story is over, but we're fanfic writers, and we can imagine whatever we want, and that's a lot of fun.
Exactly. Today we are going to list our top 3 general fan fictions, and of course, because we all love Reylo here, we're also going to do our top 3 Reylo fan fictions just for you listeners. So, Irina, would you like to start?
Yes. Also, for the fanfics we're going to present, we'll put the links in the description below, because of course we're talking about fics we love, but we also want to share them with you. So, yeah.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so my top... Yeah! My top 3 favorite fanfics, not in order of preference. Like, all 3 of them are great. I would have trouble, saying which one is better. The first one I want to talk about is Pity and its sequel, Reforging, by mylordshesacactus. So basically, it's a 2-part story covering, the blanks from the Clone Wars TV series. And okay, so if you haven't watched the Clone Wars, spoiler alert for season 5, and I mean big spoiler alert, so stop listening if you haven't watched the Clone Wars series or intend to. So what happens in that fic is that it covers what happens after Barriss Offee is arrested for her attack on the Jedi Temple. And it's all about, Luminara Unduli visiting her in prison because, Luminara was her Jedi master and everything.
That's amazing, because in the Clone Wars, I've not watched all of it, but I don't think we ever saw, how do I pronounce the name? Luminara visit Barriss.
No, and I mean, after, Barriss is arrested, she's actually never mentioned again. And that kind of surprises me that even in Rebels, they never mentioned Barriss or anything. Like, they brought back Ahsoka, but it kind of surprises me that Barriss didn't show up as an Inquisitor or something, and that she and Ahsoka had a face-off or something. Because, yeah, well, I'm not going to say more about the fic, but it's very well written. It's very moving. Like, well, the 2 parts... The second part actually made me cry, because I'm not going to say what happens in the second part, but it's a very moving story, and the author just gets Barriss and Luminara just right, and it's really a beautiful story.
It sounds awesome, and I will also say I'm just interested in that fact, because that is the best username I've ever heard for a fan fiction writer. mylordshesacactus. That is genius.
Yeah, definitely. Like, sometimes, fanfic writers, they come up with pretty interesting names. I could tell stories about, amazing pen names I've seen, but yeah, this is not a topic today, so we'll just get about fanfics. Otherwise, I think I can move on to my next fic rag. It's a fic that's, I think, is pretty well known among the fandom. It's the Not Quite Love Letters by Limelight. So it's a Han Leia fic, and it's honestly my favorite Han Leia fic ever.
I'm sad to say I don't know about that fic, because I am not a huge Han and Leia fan, but if I probably will check it out now that you've mentioned it.
Okay, but yeah, it's basically a series of letters and messages and excerpts from Leia's diary and Han's flight logs, and it starts straight after A New Hope, and I mean, it's really great because the author really gets Leia and Han just right. Like, it's hilarious. It tugs at your heartstrings. It actually talks about, Leia's trauma after, Alderaan is destroyed and everything. And, okay, the one downside to that fic is that, unfortunately, it's never been finished.
Aww.
I did hear some things about the author and, why she never managed to finish the fic. And I don't want to get too much into it, but, yeah, it's unfinished, and it probably never will be finished, but for what we have of the fic, like, I totally recommend it. Like, it's hilarious, and it's heartwarming, and it tugs at your heartstrings at the same time. And
how would you say it keeps to their characters? Like, would you say it's more like the Disney canon, or would you say it's more like their Legends counterparts?
I'd say it's more like I'd say more the Disney canon, personally, but, I kind of like how the Disney canons take on Han and Leia, personally, because, it's more true to their characterization in Empire Strikes Back, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if you agree with me, but
I do.
okay, yeah, because Leia and Han, they bicker at each other all the time, but at the same time, you just know that Leia likes Han and Han likes Leia, but they just don't want to admit it to themselves. And Han teases Leia, but Leia, she just gets angry at Han, and it's hilarious because her therapist and Maud Magma, they kind of make comments about how she's always angry at Han and everything, and it's just hilarious, really. Like, if you want a good laugh and something that's moving at the same time, like, read the Not Quite Love Letters. It's amazing.
Oh, I definitely will.
Okay, so anyway, my next fic rec is Save the Queen by OAO Human Child. So that fic is basically The Phantom Menace, but told from Sabe's point of view. So there are 2 sequels to it. I haven't read them yet, but I really should get to it because it's what happens with To Save the Queen is that it's written from first-person point of view. And I know some people usually don't like first-person point of view, but in this fic, it actually works. Sabe's point of view is very interesting. It's actually funny, and I really like how the author writes the handmaidens because they each have their own personality and everything, and they really have like this good dynamic between all of them and everything, and it's really worth reading because you kind of get a perspective on the Phantom Menace you never had watching the movie, and it actually kind of makes me wish the Phantom Menace was told from the handmaiden's point of view because it's so much more interesting that way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, if that's as good as you say, I might check it out because just to make me as you said, try and view Phantom Menace from a different point of view because wow, that movie. Let's not get into it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the way you can kind of go through the Phantom Menace is really see it as Padme's movie and see it as a teenage queen who's trying to save her planet. And once you see George R. Binks as, really a minor character who's just there for comic relief, it's actually pretty easy to go through. Like, depending on my moods, there are some days where I actually prefer the Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm not gonna lie.
Like,
I prefer
unpopular
the Phantom
opinion,
Menace
I know.
to Attack of the Clones, but they're both terrible. At least in Phantom Menace, you can remember stuff. Attack of the Clones, you can't remember anything.
Well, Attack of the Clones, like, the good parts are basically Obi-Wan's adventures in space, because, Ewan McGregor just does a terrific job as Obi-Wan Kenobi, but, like, Anakin and Padme's love story is just... I understand what they were going for, but the execution is just...
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I don't even remember half of what Obi-Wan did. All I remember... I think the thing I like most about Attack of the Clones are Padme's costumes. There we go.
Yep. Otherwise, for my top 3 general, well, that was it. I listed my top 3, but there's one fic I want to mention as an honorable mention. It's Fallen Legends by Grey Silhouette. So it's basically an alternate universe for the Clone Wars where Anakin doesn't manage to find Ventress, and when Ventress tells him like it wasn't Ahsoka who did the terrorist attack, was Barriss, I have proof, blah blah blah. And basically what happens is that Ahsoka is condemned to death, but Obi-Wan, in pure dad fashion, he breaks her out of prison, and they go and try to find out the truth. It's a really well-written story where, everyone is in character. The Jedi Council and Galactic Republic and the whole perspective on the war, it's really presented as flawed, but without going overboard with it, as some fics have a tendency to do. It's really a fic I recommend. One thing that's kind of disappointing is that the fic is complete, and the author was writing a sequel to that fic, but she never published it, and she said on her profile that she had no intention to publish it, which is a shame, but Fallen Legends is a really good fic. I totally recommend it.
Well, Grey Silhouette, if you're listening to this, I hope you please reconsider. For Irina, if for no one else. Thank you, Irina. That was awesome. So, on to my top 3 general. These fics are going way back, like back when the prequel trilogy was coming out, because that's when I first got into Star Wars fanfiction, and back then, my teenage self was a huge Untitled fan. Not so much anymore, sadly, but yeah, mine's in no particular order as well. But my first general fic is Through a Mirror Darkly by Leona Berry on fanfiction.net. And Irina, are you a fan of Star Trek at all?
I actually never watched Star Trek in my life. I mean, people keep telling me, like, oh, you need to watch Star Trek, you're gonna love it, and blah, 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 but I never actually sat down and watched it. I really have to, but I kind of don't know where to start. Like, should I start with the old TV series, or just the movies, or whatever, but I need to get into it, I know.
Well, I'm not a Star Trek fan either, but I think this fan fiction, I'm pretty sure, was inspired by Star Trek. In the original series, what happened was the original crew, we were talking about alternative universes before. The alternative crew are switched with and pulled into an alternative universe and switched with their counterparts, and they are pulled into like an evil version of their world, where Starfleet is an evil empire and they're enslaving the whole galaxy because they're so evil, and Captain Kirk is an evil captain who enjoys killing, etc., etc. And
I heard about that plot line.
It's like one of the best things about Star Trek. It's just amazing storytelling. Anyway, with this fic, it's really interesting. Basically, the Empire is in charge, and except, apart from, Anakin is pretty much Darth Vader, except, he's in his episode 3 appearance, and except, instead of, apart from him and Obi-Wan and Padme and Palpatine, everyone else is switched. Instead of, what are their names? Bane and Darth Zana creating the Rule of Sith, it was Yoda and Yaddle, which was just really, really, really interesting.
Oh my god, really?
Yeah, I'm not kidding. It's really, really good. And
no, I'm just kind of imagine Yoda and Yaddle as an evil couple, and it's hilarious, but it's awesome at the same time, and now I really want to read that fic.
If I remember correctly, I don't think they were a couple, but I think they were twins. But
okay. Oh my god! Okay. This is my Luke Leia moment, people.
Well, they're not related in actual canon, so there you go. But yeah. So did you ever read like Jude Watson's Young Jedi series about Obi-Wan training Anakin?
No, sadly. No.
Alright, well, when he was training, Anakin befriended two people named what were their names? Yeah, Dara, and there was another person, and he had a rival called Fergus Olin. Also in that series, Qui-Gon Jinn had a fallen apprentice called Yantos. Now, again, they're switched. It's kind of like Anakin kind of has his own versions of the Knights of Ren, which include Dara and Furness and this other guy. And Yantos is kind of like a good Jedi. It's really, really interesting. Anyway, Anakin is absolutely obsessed with Padme. He keeps this hollow of her, takes it out when he can, and he hires Jango Fett to go and capture her. And so it's basically Obi-Wan and the Switch Jedi, I'll call them, trying to keep Padme safe and rebuild the Republic, while Anakin chases her across the galaxy and just becomes even more obsessed with her and plots for her to become the Empress to his Emperor, so to speak. So yeah, it's a really, really, I don't think I'm doing it enough credit here by poorly describing it, but it's a really, really interesting fan fiction where it's amazing how Leona Berry switches things up in her universe and also like makes an obsessive Anakin chase after Padme, which is my favourite type of Amidala fan fiction. So yeah, my next one is The Emperor's Gift by Star Angel on fanfiction.net. I am not sure if that is still on fanfiction.net, I will have to check. But that is about, again, Palpatine takes over the Republic in Revenge of the Sith, and basically he already is Emperor of the galaxy before the prequel trilogy starts, so he already found Anakin as a slave and trained him as a Sith. And what happens is he finds out Padme was the leader of the rebellion, and he basically gives it to Anakin as some sort of slave. Now, you might think, whoa, this is leveling dark territory. It's not. It's a lovely fic. It doesn't sit well with Anakin that, he's been given Padme as a slave, so he just kind of, keeps her around because he doesn't know what else to do with her. But it's a lovely story where they sort of learn about each other. Padme teaches Anakin about, democracy and, how evil Palpatine is. Awakens his mind, so to speak, and realizes that he's actually a slave to Palpatine. And Anakin sort of teaches Padme about the injustices of the galaxy, like how he was born a slave and saved by Palpatine in his point of view. It's just a lovely little fluff fan fiction where they learn about each other and they fall in love, and it's really, really cute. You'll have to read it to find out what happens. And last one.
Well, I will.
Yes, please do. It's amazing.
Yeah, I will. I'm really interested by it, really.
I hope I'm doing it enough justice. I sound very boring just reading this. But my last but not least, my favourite general fanfiction of all time is What Nightmares May Come by Boadica. And oh wow, how do I describe this fic? Basically, it's set between the New Jedi Order and the Dark Nest trilogy, back in the days of the old EU. And Leia has a near-death experience, and she wakes up and she's sort of in limbo between, the real world and the next world, or the world of the Force, as we'll call it. And so she has to overcome trials in order to survive and go back to the real world, and if not, she'll die, pretty much. And what happens is Anakin, her father Anakin, is chosen as the person to lead her back to the real world. And what's amazing about it is, unfortunately, in the old EU, we never really properly. I wouldn't say properly explored Leia's feelings on her father, but we never, even in canon as well, we never had time to fully explore how they would, interact with each other.
Yeah, it's true.
All we had in the EU was in the novel in the novel The Truce at Bakura, Anakin appeared as a Force ghost to Leia and begged her forgiveness, but she refused to forgive him. And then, of course, we had the novel Tatooine Ghost, where Leia went to Tatooine and read Shmi Skywalker's diary and learned to forgive her father. But that was it. There was nothing, more to Anakin and Leia's relationship after that. This fic is a really nicely explored. It explores the father-daughter relationship, which we all would have loved to have seen in Star Wars. And what I love about it is, not only does she use the EU characters in an amazing way, but the way she tells Anakin and Leia's story, because obviously Leia is still bitter about what her father did with being, complicit in destroying Alderaan and torturing her, and Anakin still carries this great guilt, especially for, the way he treated his daughter. So it's really interesting how their relationship is explored in it, and also how the world of the Force is explored in it. You don't really expect what happens, but it's it kind of bounces off their their emotions a bit. And I remember there was one funny moment with these creatures. They kind of taunt Anakin a bit, but it's really, really interesting how she explores the Death World, as we'll call it, and Anakin and Leia's relationship. So yeah, there you have it, my top general 3 fanfictions.
Yeah, well, I think the fic you mentioned about Anakin and Leia, I think I'm definitely gonna read it as well, because In Return of the Jedi, they kind of decided that Leia was Vader's daughter at the last minute, so we never really saw her cope with that revelation, but it's really something that she needs to do, because you look at the Disney canon, like, I know that fic was written, like, before Disney took over Star Wars, but, you know, even in the Disney canon, like, we have Bloodline that kind of describes, you know, how the fact that Vader is Leia's father, how it influences her life and everything. I'm not going to get too much into spoilers. It's obviously an issue that's very important in her life and not in a good way, and yeah, I think that for my sake, I'm going to read that fic because I kind of need that closure, you know, between Anakin and Leia and how it impact her life in such a terrible way. So, yeah.
Please do. And it's also a great way to see Leia, you know, be a Jedi, you know, use the lightsaber and use the Force, which I think all of us wanted as little girls. So, yes, I agreed. So, yeah, moving on, what are your top 3 Reylo fanfictions, Irina?
Okay, so it was really hard for me to just pick 3 Reylo fanfictions because there are so many good fanfics out there. I tried taking fanfics that weren't too popular, well, not too popular or anything, because for me, they're kind of gems that are really underrated and they really deserve to be better known. So again, not in order of preference. The first one I'm going to talk about is Smoke and Retribution by Soto. I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong.
I just want to mention I love that author.
Yeah, well, I feel especially bad pronouncing her name wrong because I actually know her. So,
Irina!
Sorry if I'm pronouncing your pen name wrong. I really like your fics, though. You know that. Smoke and Retribution, it's an alternate universe. It kind of takes place in a steampunk kind of alternate universe, and it's based off the tale of Bluebeard. You kind of know Bluebeard, right?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, yeah, it's a story about, you know, like, raised an orphan. She works for Unavailable, and at some point, Unavailable kind of kicks her out, and she ends up. Okay, no, sorry. What happens is that, you know, Rey kind of, at some point while she's scavenging, she sneaks into Ben's house where he lives alone, and kind of starts I'm really not summarizing the fic well, I'm so sorry. She kind of starts snooping around his stuff, and she falls across a family picture, you know, with Han, Leia, Luke, and Ben. And what happens is that while she's snooping around, Ben enters his bedroom and sees her, but, you know, she manages to escape just in time. And when she comes back to Plud, like, since she came back late, if I recall well, Plud basically kicks her out. What she does is, I don't remember the exact circumstances why she goes back to Ben's house. I think it's basically because, you know, she wanted to, like, give him the picture she stole back and get money from it just to be able to eat. And what happens is that she comes at Ben's house, and, you know, Ben is kind of, I'm gonna say, amused by her for now, because obviously it develops into more. So basically he hires her as a maid. So obviously, well, things happen, and I'm not gonna say more. Just read the fic, because honestly, the relationship between Rey and Ben is really well done. And, you know, there's this whole plot with, you know, a serial killer going around, and, you know, we don't really know who it is and everything. So, well, we do know, but, you know, it's kind of interesting seeing Rey kind of discovering what's going on, like, and connecting the dots and everything. I'm not going to say more. Already I gave a pretty terrible summary of the fic, but I totally recommend it. It's really good. It's one of my favorites of all time, and I actually read it a few times because I like it that much. So,
I'm sure we've all done that with our favorite fics.
Okay, so next fanfic I'm going to recommend is It's a One-Shot. I actually didn't expect to love it as much as I did, honestly. It's called The Sharpshooter by Bunny Steals Your Carrots, as I said. Like,
awesome username.
Yeah, awesome username. It's basically a bit of a Western alternate universe. I'm kind of indifferent when it comes to, you know, Western movies and everything, but I kind of fell across this fic because it was part of a collection I participated in. I made myself like as homework, like I'm gonna read all the fics that are in this collection, and I fell across this fanfic, and it actually ended up being the fic in the collection I enjoyed the most. So yeah, so you have Kylo Ren, well Kylo, who's kind of a criminal in the Wild West and everything, and you have Rey, who's working in a bar. Well, she's not a prostitute, but people kind of expect her to like give her services, but she knows how to defend herself and everything. But at some point, Kylo comes to the bar where Rey's working, and they meet and everything. And I'm not gonna say more. I'm just gonna let you read the fic because I really enjoyed it. It's really funny. It's really sweet. It's just a lot of fun, really. And there's this belligerent sexual tension between Kylo and Rey that's just really enjoyable and one of the best I've read in Reylo fics. So, yeah, I totally recommend it.
I'm wondering how much was this inspired by that hilarious, messed up Snickers advert that Adam Driver did for
I don't remember if that fanfic was written before or after that ad, but if it was written after, then I definitely think it was inspired from that ad, really.
Bunny steals the carrots. If you're listening, please confirm. We really want to know.
Yeah, well, I could check the date and, tell you later, but yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next fanfic I want to recommend, Requiem for the Damned by Check the Holonet. Again, it's a one-shot. I recommended that one-shot because, honestly, first time I read it, it made me cry. I'm not kidding. Because just the way, yeah. So yeah, just the way they describe like, just Ben in general, like.
You sound like you're tearing up now.
Oh my god, just everything Ben goes through, his trauma and everything, like, oh god, like, I'm not gonna say more, like, just read it, like, it's worth it. It's worth it, really. So, yeah, I just don't know how to sum this up, but it's really moving, and I totally recommend it. Okay, I'm just gonna move to my honorable mention. My honorable mention is Hidden in the Desert Sands by poiticalmamaduck. It's really written like a fairy tale, and I just love it so much, mainly because studying fairy tales and how they're built, what the coding in it, like, it's something I simply love, and Hidden in the Desert Sands has so many coding of fairy tales, and I just really love it for it. And it's basically an alternate universe of, the Princess in Suit of Leather. In France, it's kind of the Arabian version of the French tale Peau d'Âne. So yeah, basically what happens is that Ben is a prince who was, if I recall well, Ben is a prince who was banned from his kingdom, and what happens is that he goes around dressed up as a beggar, and he ends up in the desert of Jakku where Rey lives. And what happens is that when he's dressed up as a beggar, everyone is treating him badly except for Rey. Yeah, so I'm not gonna say more again because I don't want to spoil. Read it for yourself. I just love the way it's written, how it's presented. It just really feels like a fairy tale, and I love it for that.
It sounds really interesting. I'm definitely going to check that out. Okay. Moving on to my top three. The first two are just together. I love them both equally. The first one is She Who Would Be Queen by Sartastic Matt. I hope I'm pronouncing your username correctly. I'm very sorry if I'm not. This was like one of the first fanfictions that I ever read for Reylo. I think it was back in January 2016 when I first watched The Force Awakens, and oh wow. Basically, Rey, and it's set in an alternative universe, like, kind of like, I'm guessing it's like, sort of, it's very historical. I'm guessing it's like, oh god, what are they called? The Versailles? Am I pronouncing that right?
My god. I don't know.
It's basically set in like a historical AU where Rey is part of the kingdom of Dakar, and therefore, like under the rule of the Republic, And she is arranged to marry Kylo, who is the heir to Snoke's empire, and goes to travel, where he is. And it is a wonderful little love story with a lot of very well written smut as well, where Rey learns about life, and she and Kylo have a very tumultuous love story, but it also deals with the intrigues and politics of court, and of course she has to watch out for Snoke as well. And I'm not going to say any more. You'll have to read it for yourself. It's a wonderful fic, and I have to say the way she writes Phasma is just like one of my favorite interpretations of Phasma of all time. Like, it's totally unexpected, but it's just, she is hilarious. I will say, just a little word of warning, Rey and Kylo Ren are cousins in this story, because I think it was back in 2016. I think it was, where everybody thought, Rey was a Skywalker. And so I think it was like a little play on that, and also because marrying cousins was very acceptable back then. And it adds for an interesting, interesting story. My second favourite one is Respite by Water Lily Rose, who is one of my favourite fanfiction authors of all time. And that's set in another alternative universe where Kylo is a teacher at a college in the UK, and Rey is his English student. Or not his English student, but, he teaches English and she's a student of English. It again deals with a lot of good sexual tension, and kind of like a forbidden love story between Rey and Kylo, because he's a teacher, he can't enter a relationship with her, and that's so frustrating, but it is frustrating.
No, I get it.
Yeah. Also, Kylo suffers from depression and anxiety, and it is like, it's a wonderful insight into how people deal with that unfortunate position, for a lack of a better word. And Water Lily Rose writes it so well. It really is an insight to what people how people deal with it, and it works so well with the story as well. So yeah, that is one I recommend you to read. Unfortunately, again, we can't say anything about it because spoiler alert. Of course, my absolute favourite fanfiction of all time, well, Reylo fanfiction of all time, no surprise to anyone who knows me, it is Landscape with a Blur of Conquerors by Disasterums, aka Kylo Vivo on Tumblr. Irina, have you read this fic at all?
Sorry?
I said, have you read this fic at all?
Okay, I admit it. I'm at university right now, and I have very little time to read fanfic. Ever since The Last Jedi came out, like, I'm just getting projects and more projects and more projects, and it's crazy. I read the first few chapters. I really, really need to leave comments on it, really, because just what I read, I really like it, and what I hear about it, it's just pushing all my buttons about, what I like in Reylo alternate universes, and yeah, I really need to get to it.
Okay, the reason I asked you, because I know we're both EU fans. Oh my god. If you are an EU fan, and even if you're not even if you're not a Reylo fan, you're indifferent to it, read this fic. This fic would be for you, because Disasterums combines the world of the EU with the world of the Disney canon perfectly. It's I wish I had her talent. So basically, Rey goes to Haps, and I think it's Haps. Am I pronouncing that right? Oh, whatever. I'm just gonna pronounce it like Haps. Communicates with a goddess, and unfortunately, because this goddess is strong in the Force, it alerts Kylo Ren to her presence, and they meet and they fight, and Rey This attracts the attention of the Happans, and Rey discovers that she is Prince Isolde's daughter, and thus is the heir to the whole Happen galaxy, whatever you call it, the Haps cluster. So in other words, she's a princess.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and also Prince Isolde's mother, who I can never pronounce the name of, who was a pretty vicious character in the EU. I'm not gonna lie, she makes an appearance and has a big part in the story. Oh, I cannot believe how well, reading the fanfiction. It also brings back reading the old EU in many ways. I think you said, Irina, before that you were a fan of Jason and Technol Car. This is kind of like Jason and Technol Car, but done with Rey and Kylo, and it's with their characters, and she writes their characters so well. And it is so basically, once they discover that Rey is the princess, Kylo becomes the emperor of the galaxy under First Order territory, with Snoke being the secret regent. Of course, another arranged marriage fic. They are betrothed, and it is the most maddening, slow burn, and character development you will ever come across, but that makes it even more delicious. Yeah, it's about, Rey discovering, the politics of Haps and learning about her court, and also her conflicted feelings about Kylo Ren. Mm-hmm. And boy, does Kylo Ren have it bad for her. It is really hilarious to read. Of course, there's loads of misunderstandings, which I won't, get into. You'll have to read it. But also, what I really love about the fic is the Knights of Ren feature heavily in it. And wow, that they all have their own unique personalities, and they're amazingly well written. I love the twins, Melfala and Merida, I think they're called. They're really fun. They're really crazy, and they're fun whenever they interact with Rey. Can't describe it anymore, but if you are a fan of the EU and if you're a fan of Disney canon, read this fic. This is for you. If you only read one Reylo fanfiction in your whole life, make it Landscape with a Blur of Conquerors, because it is an amazingly well written story. Okay, there we go. I wish I could do a better description of it, because I cannot tell you how much I love this fic.
Yeah, well, don't worry, because I think my descriptions of the fics I presented were pretty bad, so we're just the people who are listening, just see it as us throwing names of great fics we love, and just go ahead and read it. Our descriptions cannot make it just give them justice, and honestly, if we're mentioning them for a reason. They're amazing, and I mean it.
Yeah, read all of them. Please.
Yeah.
They all deserve it.
Seriously, and also, if you really enjoyed the fic, leave a comment. Not just a like or, a kudo or an AO3. Really leave a comment, because even if the fic hasn't been updated in a while or whatever, just leaving a comment, it can mean the world for an author, and I mean it.
Speaking of that, I'll just give out my honourable mention for my Reylo fanfic. It is... Oh my goodness, I've forgotten the author's name. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
Well, maybe I can remember it.
Sorry?
Maybe I can remember the author's name if you mention the title, maybe? I don't know.
It is called World in Its Dark Grace.
Oh, it's Tyrants and Cream Puffs.
Thank you! Oh my god, you're a legend. I'm so sorry, Tyrants and Cream Puffs. I forgot your username. I'm so sorry. But yes, again, this is one of the first fan fictions I ever read, and oh my god, I love it. It is set in a wonderful alternative universe. Again, it's kind of like an historical EU, except it's its own historical EU. It's not AU. Sorry, it's not really based on anything. Basically, the Resistance and the First Order were at war, and they decided to make a truce by having a few volunteers from the First Order side and a few volunteers from the Resistance side, including Rey and Kylo Ren, to marry and join their houses. So as a treaty, and of course, Kylo Ren and Rey meet at a ball where the first gathering happens, and of course Kylo, being Kylo, falls heads over heels for Rey when he first meets her. But Rey,
just those Skywalkers and those Solos.
Exactly. But Rey, of course, despises Kylo Ren because it turns out that during the war, Rey actually married Finn, and Kylo Ren is the one who is responsible for his death in a battle. So you can imagine how Rey must feel then, you know. But it's such a wonderful story. Again, the conflicting feelings that Rey has for Kylo Ren is so well written, and they're just, it's an awesome world that Tyrants and Cream Puffs has built. So yes, I recommend that, please.
Well, I will read it because I did hear about it, and unfortunately I never really sat down to read it, but I don't know, like, I think you really like arranged marriage alternate universes.
I do.
I really like them too, but so, yeah, I will read it, definitely.
Yes, and if anyone is listening, I love Dark Ren Emperor fics. I would love to see a lot more arranged marriages between The Last Jedi and the newly crowned Ren Emperor. So yeah, there we go. Just throwing that out there for anyone who's listening. Okay, so I think we've covered everything. Anything else you want to add, Irina?
Well, okay, I'm gonna say this. Just choosing what fanfics to present in this podcast was a very painful process.
Oh, so, I agree. It was so painful.
Yeah, so honestly, if any of the listeners out there want more fanfic recs, I'll be happy to give more, because honestly, there's so many fanfics that I wanted to mention, but you know, I said to myself, like, no, I think I like this one a little better, and it just broke my heart. So honestly, if you want a longer fanfic rec list, I'll do one. Like, just send a message in, you know, the YouTube comments or an email, and I'll give you a list. I promise.
That goes ditto for me. There's just, like, you know, so many, like, and these were kind of like just ones off the top of my head. Like, oh my god, I'm trying to think of others, and that's the thing, when you try and think about your favorite ones, you think, oh god, what were they called again? You know, it's that thing where you can't remember, and you panic because you can't remember.
Okay, so I think we can wrap this up.
Yep. Thanks for listening. We hope you check out our fanfiction recs, and may the force be with you.
That concludes this episode of 6 Degrees of Kylo Ren. If you enjoyed what we've brought to you, please subscribe to our channel and like and follow us on Twitter at these links shown here. Until then, we'll see you next time.